Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here at the Wealth Orders podcast, and today I'm joined with David Rhodes. He's the executive chairman of Empress Royalty, ticker symbols EMPR on the TSXV and EMPYF on the OTCQB. And I asked David on specifically because I am an investor in this company, but I do have some questions for them. So I'm happy David can come on and hopefully answer them for me.
Thanks, looking forward to it.
Now, as a first-time guest, I always start off the same way. I ask my guests what they were doing when they were my age. I'm 26. So what were you doing from 20 to 26 years old?
Well, when I was 20, just leaving college. And really from 21 to 26, I was learning my trade, which is banking. So I started in a commercial bank, doing property lending. That's my first job now, going back a good number of years. But yeah, my first job was property lending. So I was really learning the credit and assessments work in a bank.
Okay. And to fully understand Empress, I think you need to fully understand Endeavour Financial. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about your involvement in Endeavour Financial, your accomplishments there, and just who they are exactly?
Yeah, well, Endeavour Financial's been around 30 years now, and I'm 15 years. I think it's about over 15 years with the business. So Endeavour is one of the premier mining finance advisory houses, and just over 10 years ago, we did a management buyout of that business. It became Endeavour Financial, became Endeavour Mining, which is still existing, mining company. And as I say, over 10 years ago, we did a management buyout, and the management team, the managing director, is now really one of the premier mining finance advisory houses, and we've expanded the business beyond that to asset management and also into insurance as an insurance broker. So really developing that business has been a huge success. And a good example, we announced today, one of our companies we work for, Horizontal Minerals, $633 million financing for that business. And that's just hit the news wires, and they're doing the equity for that deal at the moment. So that's a good example for any people watching this to have a look at what we do as a business. So structured financings for mid and junior tier mining companies.
Yeah, not chump change, that's for sure.
Right, it costs a lot to build a nickel mine at the moment. So, yeah.
So tell me the origins of Empress Royalty, and how do you guys differentiate yourself from the other competitors in the small cap royalty space?
Yeah, so as I just kind of giving you an indication, we are in the finance business. So 15 years with Endeavour. I've been in this business 25 plus years in the finance world. So we saw probably 10 years. We saw the Wheatons and the Royal Golds getting bigger and bigger. 7 years ago, their ticket sizes got bigger and bigger. So Wheaton's $100 million plus type ticket size for deals. And we saw that the junior space is not getting any traction. So a lot of great opportunities in the smaller space, smaller deal ticket sizes, and there was no one there to fill that need. And that's really where Empress came from. Us from our business opportunities, seeing a shortage of product in the marketplace, and that's where we formed Empress, to meet that need. And it is very much a business driven by creating royalties. So we're not buying royalties from other people. We are there doing the due diligence, working with the companies, providing them a solution, structuring it, technically analyzing the opportunity. So we have a dialogue with the mining companies, which is great. And as a result, we're really creating something, and we believe in creating things. When you're one-to-one, you can get a better deal, firstly. You can negotiate the documentation the way you want it to be structured, which is important. It mitigates a lot of the risks. And thirdly, we can create better value for shareholders, much better returns than paying a premium for someone else's deal, which is not what we're doing. We're keeping that premium ourselves for our shareholders.
Yeah, and I think that needs to be stressed, because you're saying there's not a need in that, or no one filling that need in that space, but there is a lot of new royalty companies coming to market right in the past 12 months or so.
Great ideas always get other people joining on board. Yeah, true. We sadly didn't have the copyright on that one. But you're right, there are a lot of other people, but we still see, really from our perspective, we are the only ones creating royalties. You can see a lot of the other guys in the business, they're buying. which is good. It's a business model. It works for them. They're successful at it. They're creating a big portfolio of royalties. But our real drive is not about getting 100 of them or thousands of royalties. It's really about getting product and getting investments, I should say, that create value for our shareholders. So revenue generating assets. And to do that, yes, it takes time. You've got to do a lot of due diligence. You've got to, obviously market yourself. You've got to outsource those investments. But as you will see, and proof will be coming next year, our investments are starting to generate cash flow. And obviously, we're very excited about what we're looking at as a company next year. Substantial revenue coming in. And really, we've only been public for a year now. So I don't think as many of our peers, you can say within a year, they'll be producing the type of cash flow we will be doing next year.
For sure. And for anyone new to the Empress story, why don't you go ahead and tell us about the CEO, Alexandra Sherron, and what makes her the person for the job?
Yeah, no, interesting question. So firstly, Alex has been well trained. She used to work in Endeavour in London. So I worked with her in London for a good couple of years. She's got PwC background. From our time and learning, with Endeavour, she learned how to properly risk assess transactions, structure transactions, and has a wide spread of financial knowledge. And that was important. This is very much a structuring risk assessment type business we run. As I say, it's not an acquisition business. It's not that skill set. It's much more detailed on the technical side, the financial analysis side, and they're all the skill sets Alex has got, as well as being mining's in her DNA as well, which is perfect. And she's well connected within the community. And hopefully, Carl, you'll agree she's doing a great job. She's getting the business out there in the public, investor base, very responsive. And, so from our perspective, perfect choice.
Yeah. And you guys came to market making a lot of noise because you had 3 strategic partners. And that's the reason I wanted to ask you to come on my program, is because I wanted to know what happened with one of your strategic partners, Accendo Banco. I said I am a shareholder, but I did have to take some scratch off the table because I don't understand the situation. So please provide some reassurance for me and just educate us on that situation.
Yeah, and it's just very disappointing for us. So Accendo Banco, as you say, one of our strategic partners, they helped us do business in Mexico, very well connected in that small to mid-tier mining community. So very helpful to us when we started off looking at investments. They unfortunately lost their banking license. So, we believe, like most banking regulators, they rule on the liquidity ratios for banks, and sadly, Accendo Banco was below the ratio required on liquidity, and therefore their banking license was taken away. From Empress's point of view, obviously we did have a good 9 months working with Accendo Banco and the people there. So we have all that data, we have all that information, we have all the leads, we have all the contacts, which is good news because we can continue to work with them. The people obviously are still around. It's just obviously the institution that isn't. So we've still got all those connections. But yes, disappointing from our perspective with Accendo Banco no longer being an institution.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your potential pipeline because I know, well, I'm assuming Tahuehueto is in Mexico. So I was wondering, did they help you with that deal? But that makes sense. If you've been in the market for 9 to 10 months already, you've already reached out to these potential pipelines. So
yeah, we have, and obviously the people are key behind it. So we've got a good relationship with them, and obviously they're still in the business. Obviously not the bank itself, as you rightly say, but they're still in the business. And you're right, Tahuehueto, as it's now called as the company, that was one of their transactions they brought to us, and we obviously, as Endeavour, as well as with Empress, funded the $20-odd million, I think it was about 6 months ago, to finish the Tahuehueto asset, which is now, it's a great opportunity. 50% built, 6 months to production, just needed the capital to get it finished. And obviously we've been part of that solution, and fingers crossed, end of this year, there may be first ore going through the mill and production next year. And providing that type of creation is really good example for the investors in Empress and people looking to invest in Empress about what we do. So it wasn't just a stream. We put some capital in, We've actually put some management time in as well to obviously make sure the company gets it right from a board position and a overview of the management. And hopefully, and I always have to say hopefully in mining,
Yeah,
it'll be producing at the beginning of next year.
for sure. And I want to touch on Tahuehueto, but I still want to talk about Accendo. And what I don't understand is I'm an Empress shareholder. It sucks what happens with Accendo, but I want to know what happens with the share structure of Accendo or Empress, sorry, because they owned a good chunk of Empress shares. So is there going to be a mass liquidation event going forward, or what happens with your stock?
Well, exactly. I mean, the liquidator is appointed. I mean, the first thing they're doing, and just to let you know, we are shareholders as well, so we share obviously the same concerns as you can imagine, and so does the management team and the board. In that perspective. So we've reached out to the liquidator already. They are going through the process as anybody would do of detailing all the assets the bank's got and obviously looking at. So that's going to take some time to obviously go through and obviously detail that as any liquidator would do. As I say, we reached out. We've already explained to the liquidator the position of every, and they have other mining shares as well, just so we're not the only one in that sense. So we're all there, all the relevant mining companies that have got shareholding saying the same thing, which is, look, you've got to do a block sale of these shares. The liquidity in most of these mining stocks is not deep enough to be able to sell that volume of shares. So we have reached out to them, as I said. We've discussed about block sale, and we are in a negotiation with them at the moment, obviously to look at placing those shares with safe hands. So people like ourselves or other parties who may be interested in having those shares, rather than a liquidation on the marketplace, because that helps nobody, including obviously their role as liquidators to maximize value. So it doesn't help them by doing that. And as I say, we're in communication with them and talking to them about organizing some form of friendly block sale.
Okay, thanks for the transparency. And I'm just wondering, are you looking at another strategic partner to take off this block sale, or is it going to be institutions? Or
yeah, it's going to be more likely institutions. I mean, strategic partners, they have a great lot of value for us when we're growing as a business. So it gives you an initial source of introductions, gives you an initial source of especially in Mexico, a great source of information and knowledge of what's happening in the marketplace. So it's very valuable to us in that case. Terra Capital as well, very valuable to us. As we are growing as a business, we're getting on name outs of the marketplace. We've got a great pipeline of deals already. So getting a new strategic partner is not number one on our agenda. We've really grown beyond that. I'm not saying never. If a good partner comes up, that's reasonable. But I think that was very much for the kickoff that we needed at the start to give us that extra boost as a new company being formed, and less required now, because we've got a great pipeline of over $75 million of potential deals we're working through at the moment. And just looking at the deals, and we've got our development assets, which you mentioned, Tahuehueto. There's obviously Manica as well. But we're really now moving into the production assets. So Seirra and Antapite is one, which is in producing and expanding. If I look at the pipeline that we're going through, we have weekly calls going through our work in progress. There's a lot of other production assets we're now looking to move into. So really stepping up into more cash flow generation investments into good returning assets.
yeah, production. Well, let's talk about your one production asset right now, Seirra Antapite. Go ahead and educate us a little more for people that might not be familiar. Talk about the stream, the asset, and any progression since you funded them.
Yes, so Seirra Antapite is a good example of what we're looking at and what we're investing in at the moment. So it's an existing gold producing asset. And with these good gold prices, they're looking to actually maximize value for their mine. And we came to them and said, there's certain ways to do that. We've got the best way for you, which is putting in a gold stream. And they're looking to expand from 750 tons per day to 1,000 tons per day, expanding their mill, some of the tailings, and also we provided the capital to do that. We've done 7.5 million of the $10 million investment. We've still got 2.5 to go. We have a funding solution being worked on at the moment to deliver that 2.5 million to them. We hope to be able to announce in the next couple of months, the solution we're working on for that. It's a great story of a good company. It's a Peruvian company run by Peruvians. There are some, Europeans that lived in Peru for a good 20 plus years that are also heading up the business. And we've done our due diligence. That's the joy of creating things, is that our technical team have been down there in March to do some due diligence. Our own staff, management went down in September. We were on weekly calls talking about how the expansion's going and monitoring them. And as I say, the documentation and the structure allows us all the information flow, and is structured as a stream, which allows us to get our gold. We get the gold from the refinery. So when they produce some gold, we get our take from the refinery. So a lovely structure where we get our money first. And then obviously the rest goes to the company for operating costs and their profit. So from our point of view, there's been a bit of chat about Peru in the marketplace. Obviously the president, and there was unfortunately one of the companies was, I can't remember which one, but
Rothschild's Mining.
Rothschild's, that's the one. It's always difficult, obviously, when you've got a new president. There's always a lot of chat, and there's different factions working behind the scenes. But we obviously, as we went into the transaction, knew obviously the new president knew about the concerns in the marketplace. However, I think our analysis of the situation was that these types of companies, and obviously this is a private company, so it's not as open and as transparent to the marketplace, but it is to us, because we negotiated and structured it and have done our due diligence. This is a well-run company with very good ESG credentials. And the key thing for us is, and I think the president came out on Monday, I don't know if you've seen it, but he came out on Monday saying, we support the mining industry. We support private companies that are good for the environment and the social side to the business. So on Monday he came out and supported it, which kind of went a little bit against the Rothschilds comments that came out there. And what his point is, I think, reading between the lines, and the article I think is on the Newswire, he's saying, look, if you treat the environment and you treat the social and governance sides of mining, then you're welcome. And I won't comment on Rothschilds, I don't know the detail, I just read the press. But from the president's lips is, private companies, very supportive. So if you haven't got it, I'm happy to send you the link, because we saw the link to that news article from the president on Monday. And the companies he's talking about is Seirra Antapite, the Sun Group that we're supporting here. So very much validating why we're supporting those guys. And that's key in most things. I mean, and Carl, just a bit of, from my perspective, if you've got mining issues, they can be fixed. If you've got milling issues, they can be fixed. Management issues you can fix. The one thing you can't fix is ESG. The one thing that kills a project is making a mistake on your ESG side. Most mines get fixed, but if you've got any environmental or social problems, that kills mines. I think that is the core of something I've learned in 30 years of being in this business. Everything else can fix, but you don't get your ESG right, then that can shut you down. And that's something we take a lot of time and effort to make sure we get right as a business.
That's good to
Not
hear.
just Empress, but generally in our DNA. And the world's changed. I mean, when I started this business, probably the ESG side wasn't as strong 20 years ago in the mining business, and now it's number one. And rightly so. Rightly so.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because going forward, ESG is important, and you're talking about private companies in Peru and Mozambique, and it's different if they were private companies in Ontario or Quebec, but they're in different places. So we're putting a lot of faith into your due diligence process with this, because ESG, we don't know if it's affecting water downstream, or if there's illegal mining going on, or if there's human rights violations. So me as an investor, I can't do that due diligence with private companies. So I need the reassurance from Empress and making sure you partner with the right people.
Yeah, and happy to reassure you on that side. And to be honest, I hear you saying about Canada, Ontario, there's regulators in every every, let's be honest, the world is so small nowadays. It's not, I know Mozambique sounds a long way away, but there's a mining regulation there. There's ESG is number one in all miners around the world, doesn't matter where you're located. ESG, and from our own perspective, just to reassure you, ESG is number one. How we look at, we will not invest unless there's full ESG, because as I just mentioned, that will kill a mine. Mining, yes, you've got a mining issue. You can fix it with new trucks or new whatever, or new mine ore body analysis. Milling, yes, you can improve the milling. ESG will kill it. So it's number one from our point of view. And it doesn't really matter what part of the world. There are regulations, equator principles, World Bank standards that we adhere to, and our investors, insist, because we do not want anything on our watch for obvious reasons. And part of what Endeavour Finance does is raising finance for other bigger companies, bigger assets. It's all done on the same principle as we recommend the investments to Empress. Top quality due diligence, top quality financial analysis, top quality ESG.
I was just going to say, because it's not Empress's reputation on the line only, it's also Endeavour's as well as Terra Capital. So it is other people's reputations on the line. So that's why I am an investor, and I do see you guys aren't trading. You trade on a discount to many of your peers. I think it's justifiable at this point, but what I am excited to see is the cash flow metric and the projections you do have going forward in 2022. And for these small cap royalty companies, I don't see many with silver cash flow streams coming forward. So that's what I'm really excited about, because I'm bullish on silver. So why don't you go ahead and talk about that Tahuehueto, because anyone that looked at that deal, they'd be impressed with what you guys did there. So talk about the structure of that stream, the Tahuehueto project, and the development there. Do you think there'll be silver poured? There's only 1 month left in this year.
Yeah, I don't think silver will be poured this year. As I say, I think the key thing, and you're right, it's nearly the end of the year. It's gone quick. I think firstly, we're hopeful, and just by the way, I'm the chairman of the company. So I know a little bit too much. I'll have to obviously keep things public in that sense. We're hopeful that we'll get some ore going through the mill. So hopefully be able to get that mill turning by the end of the year. And obviously then we've got to ramp up the operations. So hopefully by Q1, we'll be getting some concentrate out. And obviously it's a high quality precious metal concentrate, obviously with silver. And the silver obviously is streamed to Empress. So yes, I think Q1, we'll see the returns coming through to Empress of that investment. And it's, as Ralph has said, the CEO, so far it's on time, on budget. Obviously ramp up is, for any mine, hopefully, will be a swift, and as projected, it'll be, Q1 to get production coming out.
And what are the projections for cash flow next year? Because when I was looking, what I found rather high was your metrics for NAV was $21 silver, $17.50 gold. Can you justify those prices?
Yeah, well, I think spot prices are higher at the moment for start. So it's interesting. You mentioned obviously you think they're slightly high. We get some investors going, "Can you run higher?" Obviously, silver bulls are saying, "Can you do $25?" When you look at your analysis for looking where the metrics are for the company, and gold bugs obviously look at different metrics. When we look at an investment, look at different pricing scenarios. So our return metrics for the company is not done at spot, it's not done at the prices. I mean, that's the equity prices we use to give indications. So we run a lot of lowercase scenarios to make sure as an opportunity it's going to make a good return for the business. But where we are with the inflation, where we are with the Fed interest rates, we view those kind of prices as something which is likely to be seen for the next good couple of 3 years or so. Our view is that there's so much debt in the world that you can't raise interest rates. Central banks can talk about it and the market may react, showing that interest rates may be going up. But if you increase interest rates, you've got a lot of interest to pay on that debt. And that means you're going to have more debt because it can print more money. So our view is low interest rates will survive for longer, which is obviously good for precious metals. And obviously we're like yourself, bullish on silver and also bullish on gold.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think most investors looking at these companies probably agree with that statement. That's why they're looking. I just, with these royalty companies, NAVs and important metrics when comparing to competitors, and you get the luxury of using the standard discount rate. Whereas, again, comparing Quebec to Mozambique or something, like, I'm just wondering, how do you factor in the jurisdictional risk? Because it's not really a quantifiable thing, but how can me as a novice investor factor in this jurisdictional risk? It is nice that you're bankers, and as a banker, you get to make the deal, structure the deals accordingly, and you get the return you want out of it. But
yeah, and I think it's a good point. I think obviously when you invest in a company, you invest in the management, to be able to successfully transact and successfully structure these things. So if you take the Mozambique, transaction, we've done a stream for in Mozambique. We know Mozambique as a business, that's Endeavour. We've worked successfully transacted there, so we know how to structure the deal. And in that case, we actually have a secured stream. So we've actually got security. So we've got well over $10 million worth of plant and equipment secured against our stream, which is a $2 million stream. So we're well and truly over collateralized, which we don't think anything happens. So we've made that structurally secure for the investor. So worst case, which it shouldn't happen, because we're obviously the assets, we've had our technical team down there, I think last month, checking it out and how it's progressing. So that's one thing we do, Carl, which we assure investors, is we do a lot of monitoring to make sure the asset is going to perform as we expect. So, we're hopeful Q1 that'll be in production as well, similar to Tahuehueto. And the key thing there is, its location. It's on the west middle side of Mozambique, next to the Zimbabwe border, part of that whole Zimbabwe gold belt. And the logistics are good. The team obviously everything's coming, a lot of the equipment, because it's finishing construction, comes from South Africa and is working well at this point in time on the construction side. So we're confident with our monitoring that will be in production. And Mozambique, I've said this a few times to people, it's one of the countries now that's gone through huge change. There's $15 billion investment going into the northern part of Mozambique with the LNG there. So all the international banks, all the international agencies are funding that LNG. So there's a huge amount of investment. I think it's the largest investment in Africa is going into Mozambique. So that gave us that reassurance when we saw that going in, and it's still going in now over the last 3 years, to say, yes, there is bigger entities in that country to help and support that country, and obviously give us the reassurance as well for our investment. And you mentioned obviously how do investors, I think understanding the DNA, I mentioned Alex, and obviously working with Endeavour and understanding the structuring and the risk assessment. That's what we do as a business, and that's something from the management of myself being chairman, and through the board and management, we insist upon that rigorous due diligence. So countries that we go to, we have operated there before, we've done deals there before, we know the risks, we know how to mitigate them. And that's often can be through a structured transaction where we have security over an asset. So we do have some collateral, and it can be structurally in the sense that more monitoring is done of the asset. You mentioned the ESG, number one, importance of us, and that's why we do have that contact regularly with the companies to monitor how they're performing, the ESG aspects, to make sure our investment is sound, and also, if the asset's going to be built on time, if it's developed, if it's operating, then it's operating, soundly to the right standards. So yes, it is different to a lot of other companies out there that are buying, bits of paper, buying streams, buying royalties, because they've already been created by someone else, and maybe not to their standard, but they're just buying it. We create it to our standard, which hopefully gives investors the comfort in what we're looking to do here as a business, and our comfort that we will be driving the business forward to produce that cash flow, which is important for our business to grow and develop. And then obviously our aim is obviously paying a dividend to become a yielding asset class, because that's an important factor. I think mining has to become a yielding asset class to obviously drive more generalists to invest in the business.
For sure, for sure. You were teasing about the financing of Seirra Antapite and taking a couple months. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about 2022 and your plans going forward. Like, are you looking at getting the cash flow you're going to be receiving from Tahuehueto, I think Mozambique, as well as Seirra Antapite, or are you looking at getting a larger financing and doing deals earlier on in the year?
Yeah, no, good question. So, as you know, we had the Accendo Banco loan that we're looking to put in place. That obviously failed. That's the bank failed. So we're really looking to replace that with another banking type facility. So that's where, you know, our initial capital for the Seirra Antapite final installment will come from. And we're, you know, going through the negotiations there, so there's no certainty, but hopefully in the next couple of months we'll be able to put into place a banking facility. The issue with, you know, small companies like ourselves that are developing is you need a large portfolio and a huge track record. You need a credit rating really to be able to get the best deals. So we are new, we don't have a credit rating. So the first banking facility will always be a little bit more expensive, a little bit more onerous in that sense, but you have to go through that to get your credit rating. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll be able to announce that, complete the Seirra Antapite deal, and then use that facility to drive forward new business. And that will give us the buffer where we don't always need to go to the equity markets. Because obviously, you know, with a business at the moment, the capital is equity. And therefore it's, you know, fairly obvious when we've got a great pipeline that we were going to the equity markets. We're hopeful that this new facility will give us that buffer where we can use that banking facility to obviously fund the transactions, then show, you know, through our marketing and the shareholder returns, through the cash flows, you know, an improved NAV, improved return, improve our share price, which then allows us to tap the market at a higher share price, improved metrics for shareholders.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for everything, David. I appreciate you coming on and telling my listeners more about it. I was having a few questions. You've answered a lot of them. I do have 3 more questions though, and it's in the vault segment. So it's not about Empress Royalty or your deals. It's more mentorship-like questions that I ask every guest. It's my favorite part of every episode. So let's get into the vault. In the vault, first question, what did your parents teach you at a young age that has stuck with you to today?
That's a tough question. Quite a few things, to be honest. I don't think I've got time to go through them all. I think the key thing was politeness. Always saying thank you. And always, to be honest with you, the key thing is being polite and being considerate to people. They're the key drivers I've got from my parents. That's
funny. Being a financier, your politeness is number one.
Well, to be honest, you know, I go out to meetings or somebody invites me to lunch, you got to say thank you. So many times you don't get a thank you if you take someone out to lunch. Politeness, sadly, is something I think is key, and people really welcome it as well, in all different walks of how you react with people. So thanking someone just spending time like this, talking to me. You know, thanks, Carl, for spending your time as well, not only, you know, my time. So I think that's important. And you said something my parents have driven through me. That is it. A politeness and a kindness for people giving their time, and also, you know, spending time with you. It's a valuable commodity, time.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. That's a good answer. Second question, we are the Wealth Holders podcast. So can you name a high net worth individual or a wealth holder? And if you don't want to disclose his or her name, that's perfectly fine. But what did he or she teach you either in business or in life?
Yeah, I'm quite a studier of a lot of different investors, and you know, being a financier, I suppose one of my hobbies is, you know, reviewing, reading, and looking through, you know, how people have made their wealth and the trends, etc. And one of the key fundamental, you know, investors that I follow is Warren Buffett. So, you know, his style of investing in quality assets. So he looks for value. So he's driven by investing in value. And I think from over the last, you know, 30 years when I've been looking at from my finance world, he's just always been there as a value investor. So he doesn't follow trends. He looks for value and looks for good opportunities where he can invest in value. And I think that's one of the key drivers that, did I buy Tesla stock? No, how annoyed am I? Did I buy X, Y, and Z over the last 10 years? No, I didn't, but value. So really I'm driven by looking at value stocks where you can understand the metrics of why you're buying into a company. Yes, doesn't mean I always get it right, but from looking at hindsight. But I think Warren Buffett and really his teachings and the way he looks at value propositions is something which I take very much on board when I look at investing. And I think it's a very good model to follow.
For sure, that's good. And last question, I'm just a 26-year-old starting his journey in life. Any advice for the young listeners out there?
A simple one, because I kind of use it all the time to a lot of people. And the world's got really noisy, it's got really busy. There's thousands of different people shouting and screaming at you through different media outlets. And my one kind of feedback is you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen, and sometimes just go quiet and just listen. So my advice to a lot of people nowadays is listen, take it in, more than you speak, which I could have done the opposite on this call.
Following your advice.
Thank
you.
That would be my advice to people.
So I'm going to thank you, David, for coming on the program. I do appreciate your time. I do like letting my guests close off, though. So here's your chance to say whatever you like to my listeners out there.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you, Canadian Carl, for the time, and thank you for the questions and the opportunity. Just really, the key here is Empress, and you've mentioned a few questions, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond and give my points of view across. One thing you did mention is how we're undervalued, and it's obvious. We're a new company. We've got to prove ourselves. And all I can say to investors and yourself as an investor is, you'll see over the next 3 months, 6 months, as our investments start to generate cash flow, that we have proven our model. And I think proving our model will prove to investors and hopefully the community to continue to reduce that differential with our peers and actually give us the value we deserve as a company.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Have a great day.